Hey guys, and welcome to another video. This is going to be a quick explanation of Fantasy RLCS, and if you already know what Fantasy RLCS is, then stick around anyway, because I'm going to be giving you my top 5 bargain picks for this year's Fantasy RLCS, and also my top 5 power picks. So that's going to be in a few minutes, but first let me just explain what Fantasy RLCS is. So the general gist of it is it's just a way for fans of RLCS to make watching RLCS more exciting. You go and make a fantasy team by mixing and matching your favorite players from the RLCS within a budget constraint, and then you have to, pick the players that you think are going to do well on any given week, and there's transfers that you can make every week to chop and change your team. And the best players, or the players who get the most points in game and who score the most goals, get the most assists and most saves, are going to get you points in the leaderboard, so you can make fun of all your friends. So this is the first page you're going to see if you go to that link here. And once you've logged it, or once you've created an account, verified that email address, go to this URL, and then you click pick team. It'll take you to a screen where all these boxes will actually be empty. I've already done this. I've already picked a team here. But yeah, your boxes will all be empty. Don't worry though. I can chop and change this as much as I want. So let me just explain what's going on here. So this is my account, joined by YouTube. It's my second account on this site that I made just for the purpose of this video. This countdown timer is important because when that hits 0, there will be a roster lock. You're not allowed to make any more free transfers. So if you want to be a part of Fantasy RLCS this season, get it done before this hits 0. And that time is actually going to be lower by the time you guys see this. I think it'll be just under 3 days. So you've got enough time. No need to panic yet, but you do want to get it done sooner rather than later. We've got the game, or the week 1 fixtures for EU and NA here. That is relevant. We'll come back to that in a second. But let's get into the players first. Let's explain what's going on here. So all the players in RLCS, NA, EU, and OCE are listed on the left here in order of most expensive to least expensive. Now these values they're just values that have been made by the site. The players weren't bought for these amounts of money, there weren't transfers like in real sports. This is just fantasy made up numbers. But the numbers are based off last year's, or how well the players performed in last year's Fantasy RLCS. So Niels Kok, a lot of you might not know Niels Kok. He was actually the EU MVP and the guy who had the most saves in all of RLCS. That's why he's at the top. And then you got more regular names, or more well-known names: Jnaps and Magnus, Justin, Fairy Peak, Fashy, and the like. And everybody just going down the list, and you've got all the substitutes from every team at the bottom. So you have $10,000 to spend, and 1,000, or at least 1,000 of that is going to be taken up by a bench player. So really you've got $9,000 to spend, and that has to get you 6 players who are going to be split into 3 categories: attacker, midfielder, and defender. Now I'll explain that in more detail in a minute. The first thing I want to explain, or tell you guys though, is make sure for week 1 that you have players fielded who actually have games in the first week. You can see all the fixtures for week 1 up here, and you can see all the rest of the fixtures for the season on the Rocket League Leaguepedia or Liquipedia site. I'll put that link in the description. That's what we're looking at here. This is the NA schedule, and up here we've got the Europe schedule, also the OCE schedule, but I'm not going to be talking about OCE at all because that's not my area of expertise. So yeah, you can look ahead, and if we look ahead beyond week 1 schedule here, we'll notice that Envy and Complexity don't have games in week 2, and over in North America, Cloud9 and Out of Style don't have games in week 2, whereas they do in week 1. Now that's important, because if we picked a whole bunch of Complexity, Envy, Cloud9 and Out of Style players for our roster in week 1, that would be fine for 1 week, but then week 2 comes along and you're limited to 2 transfers per week, so you would be stuck with a bunch of players who won't get you any points in that week. So this requires a little bit of forward planning. You need to look at the schedule for all of the season and make sure that you're not going to be stuck with a bunch of players who all need to be transferred out at the same time. Of course, you do have that guy in the back pocket who you can sub in should you have a disaster. And this guy, let's say you have 3 players in your starting lineup who don't have a game at the start of a week, and you can only transfer out 2 of them. Then you look at your bench, you're like, oh, thank goodness, okay, this guy has a game, we'll sub him in. So that's one thing you could maybe do, keep someone in reserve. But I would just recommend leaving a bench player to be like literally a substitute to save you money, so you can make your starting team better. And then just don't screw it up with planning. Don't pick an entire Cloud9 roster in week 1 and then be stuck with one of them in week 2, earning you no points. So yeah, just be careful. Now, these roles, attacker, midfielder, and defender, are important. If I wanted to swap Garrett from attack into defense and I wanted Fairy Peak in attack instead of defense, I would just grab the bar at the top, so this one says defender, or I could just grab this one and then just drag it over there and it swaps. That's the way that you swap players' positions. And if we want to swap iIgnite from my bench, if we want to bench Violent Panda for iIgnite, then you just click the switch to bench button, and that's how you do that. If you want to transfer a player, preseason you're allowed to make as many transfers as you want. So I just picked this team earlier randomly, and if I wanted Justin in my team, then I could just click this button, and there we go. Oh wait, I can't actually afford that transfer. Let's buy somebody cheaper. Let's get Gimmick. Okay, we can surely afford Gimmick. Alright, Gimmick for Fairy Peak. Bam, now we got Gimmick in there instead of Fairy Peak. That's how you transfer. You just click the plus, then you choose who you want to buy, and of course if you can't afford it, it tells you, sorry, you can't afford this. So that's the how to make up a team. One more thing I'm going to do before I tell you guys my pick, or my 5 bargain picks of this year's RLCS Fantasy, and also my 5 power picks. We're just going to take a quick look at the FAQ so I can show you guys how the points are scored, because I know a few people are going to ask and you're not going to read the FAQ yourself, and I don't want to get a million tweets asking me how. So this is how it's done. Managers will be given points based on how well their players from their team do in the following categories. Score. You get 1 point in the league, or in your fantasy league, for every point that a player gets in-game. So if Squishy finishes off a game with 400 points in the in-game leaderboard, you get 400 points. Seems good. You also get bonus 50 points for every goal that your players score, bonus 25 for assists and saves, and bonus 15 for shots. And this is where the attacker, midfielder, and defender bit comes in. Attackers get bonus points, or they get double points for goals. So they actually get 100 for every goal they score. Midfielders get 50 for every assist instead of 25, and defenders get 50 for saves instead of 25. That's why you want to make sure that you pick players you expect to get lots of saves in defense, players you expect to get a lot of assists in midfield, and players you expect to get a lot of goals rather in offense. Shots actually doesn't matter. So that's the only other thing you need to take into account. Oh, actually, there's one other thing. What happens if a player plays in 2 different series in a week? A lot of people are going to say, oh, surely you should just pick NRG players in week 1 because they have 2 series. Cloud9 only have 1 series. But that's not actually a problem. The points are calculated on a per game basis. So if Garrett from NRG scores 20,000 points over the course of 10 games, he's going to score you 2,000 points for that week, because they divide the total points by the amount of games he played. If Squishy scored 8,000 points over 4 games, then he's also going to get 20,000, or he's also going to get 2,000, because it's divided by the 4 games that he played. So that's a quick explanation of how that works. I think the rest of it should be pretty self-explanatory. If you do have any questions or things that you don't understand, then just refer to the FAQ. It is up here, and it's not that long. I'm not going to read everything in it because I know you guys don't want me to do that. But what I will do is tell you guys my top picks, starting with the power picks. So as I said earlier, you have $10,000 to spend. That's your budget, $10,000 minus at least 1,000 for a substitute. So you really have $9,000 between 6 players. That's an average of 1,500. So a lot of these players at the top are going to put you, if I grabbed 3 players, if I got JNaps, Magnus, and Justin, then suddenly I'm 325 over my budget, or my average budget, and I need to look for bargains at the bottom. So you need to be careful when you're buying players. Don't blow your budget and then have literally nothing left over at the end. Because if you're forced to pick players from the very bottom, these players who all cost 1,000, they're all substitute players. They're not going to be starting. They're not going to get you any points. Don't pick these players unless you follow one of these teams on Twitter and you hear that one of these players is in fact substituting in for a main player that week. Then go ahead. But that's just to warn you guys. These players are not starters. Even Greasy, he's a bench player this season. All right. So my number 1 power pick this season is going to be Justin. I think at 1575, he just outvalues JNAPS. JNAPS is 1625. But Justin is probably going to be the top goal scorer in North America by the time that the season is over. Definitely going to be worth picking him up, in my opinion. Second power pick is going to be JNAPS, though. And another great goal scorer. I want to say as well that if you are going to pick up JNAPS, definitely do it in week 2, because he only plays against Evil Geniuses in week 2, and week 5, because he plays Momentum and Out of Style in week 5. So they're the 2 weeks that JNAPS plays where Cloud9 and NRG aren't staring him down opposite the other side of the field. So great times to pick JNAPS. If you want to pick NRG players, week 1 is a good time to do that. Out of Style and Ghosts are going to be against him, and week 2 as well. Momentum are going to be against him. So they're the 2 weeks that NRG are probably going to score the most points. In week 3, they have to face G2, and in week 5, they have to play Cloud9. So it's going to be a bit more difficult. That does lead me to my third power pick, which is going to be Garrett G. Always a points per game machine in Fantasy and in RLCS history. So yeah, again, $15, $25, a little bit cheaper than Justin, $100 cheaper than JNAPS. So really saving there. And Garrett, yeah, he's probably going to be at the top of leaderboards, getting tons of points. And somebody who actually has a lot of saves as well as Garrett. So that's another role you could put him in. You put him in defense if you've got attack already on lockdown. Now, I'm not just saying this to try and back up my predictions from Envy earlier in the week in my top players video, or my top teams video, where I predicted how I think teams are going to stand at the end of RLCS. I think iignite is going to be a power pick this season. I would not be surprised if this guy is top goal scorer in Europe by the end of the season. I absolutely would not. He is a goal scoring machine, one of the best strikers in the world. And at 1550, you might think that's a little bit expensive for a team like Envy, who are in trouble. But Envy, even last season, where they were losing most of their series and most of their games, still put up good numbers. And Fantasy League is not about team wins, it's about players putting up numbers. So iignite, I think, is still going to be a huge point scorer, even if Envy don't do well. So that's, I think, another power pick for me. Now, last power pick is going to be Squishy Muffins, who, by the way, is a complete steal at 1475. I'd be surprised if there's anybody who doesn't have Squishy in their team when he's this cheap. Absolute bargain. 1475. You can't not pick Squishy, especially in week 1 where he only has to play Ghost. You definitely want to grab Squishy for this week. And yeah, you want to grab him for week 3 as well, because that's Out of Style and Rogue against him. Week 4 he's going to be against G2, and week 5 he's going to be against NRG, so that's a bit tougher. Oh, I forgot to tell you guys what weeks are the best to pick iignite. Let me just do that real quick. So iignite, the best weeks to pick him are probably going to be I would say week 3 and 4, because week 5 might be a bit tricky with Vitality and Fnatic. Week 4, I think that the Gale Force matchup will be salvaged by the fact that they also play Envy. And week 3 versus Complexity and Flipside, that's going to be, I think, a little bit easier than week 5. But yeah, overall, I don't think it matters really who iignite is up against. I really don't, compared to other players. I think iignite is just going to crush it. He's just going to get tons of points. So that's my 5 power picks. I've got Justin, JNAPS, Garrett, iignite, and Squishy. So 4 North Americans, 1 European in my power picks. They're the guys that you want to splash a lot of money on, just because they're going to get you points. All right, let's scroll to the bottom and do 5 bargain picks. So like I said before, all these guys who cost 1,000 are actual substitutes. So you can put one on the bench, but if you put any of them in your starting lineup, they're not going to get you any points, unless one of them happens to be starting that week, which is unlikely. My first bargain pick, though, is going to be Miho, who hasn't played in RLCS Season 4, but he did play in RLCS Season 3 with the exact same roster that he's going to be playing with in Season 5. That is Dapper and Timmy as teammates. And Miho at 1150 is so cheap. He's a proven RLCS player, not in last season, but in the season prior. However, I expect that this guy's going to do definitely enough work to justify an 1150 purchase. The only reason I'm skipping over Yukio here is because he's not had the best numbers online in points per game. I do still think that Yukio could pop off, but he's more of a question mark, and I would defer more to players who have had points per game, high points per game averages in this sort of thing, just because I expect Flipside to do quite well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Yukio is going to score well. He's not been scoring well in points per game, and that's all that Fantasy is about. It's about getting goals, getting assists, getting saves, getting points. So Miho, I think, is the best, the cheapest player that I would definitely want to be picking. And if you want to know what weeks to pick him in, week 1 is a great week because they only play against Evil Geniuses. And also where is it? Week 4, yeah, another great week for Momentum because they play Ghost and Out of Style. So that's definitely a solid week. Don't, whatever you do, pick Momentum players in the last week and expect much off them though, because they're against Cloud9 and G2. So maybe by the end of the season, more will be revealed, and maybe Momentum are popping off and beating everybody, and you could just pick all their players. But, you know, for right now, it looks a bit risky to do that. Alright, I am going to give Mystic a spot in my top 5 bargain players. Even though he costs more than Yukio, he has better points per game stats, significantly better in recent months, playing with Yukio on the same team as him. So he's, I think, the more safe bet and not that much more expensive. Good weeks to pick Flipside in are, well, actually week 1, because week 1 they're against Complexity, who they have been beating a lot, and Excel, who they should beat. So that's probably the best week for Flipside. The other thing that's noteworthy about Flipside players is that you don't have to change them until the very last week. Like, Flipside play in every single week until the last one. So that kind of removes some of the thinking about this if you grab Flipside players. Cuxer, by the way, just missed out on my power picks. He was my number 6. So Cuxer's also a pretty solid pick, especially for defense. Another great bargain is the Snasky and Maestro duo. This is a great like 1-2 pick. These guys, very, very similar stats, and they're absolutely the same price. And Fnatic, after not playing in week 1, playing every other week. So there again, another just very easy one to schedule. If you have Squishy in your team and you're wondering, okay, who do I replace Squishy with? Because Squishy doesn't play week 2 and I need to pick someone up. Fnatic players might be a good option because they play week 2, 3, 4, 5. You wouldn't need to worry about that spot ever again. And yeah, Meister and Snasky, great picks. I think they're just they're in my bargain 5 for sure. And if I had to tell you where to put these guys on the field, it's actually quite funny. I looked up their stats and they're almost identical down the line. Like, they have the exact same goals per game and almost the exact same points per game out of the last 6 months. So yeah, anyway, they're kind of all-rounders. So is Miho, by the way. Miho, they're all all-rounders. Mystic, definitely best in attack though, I will say that. Alright, my last bargain pick is going to be Dapper. A little bit more expensive than Miho. However, he is, I think, still going to get you enough points to make it worthwhile, and still not at all expensive. 12.25, same as Maestro and Snasky. This is very, very like down in the cheap end of the spectrum, and that rounds off my power picks. Dapper is definitely not an assist machine recently, more of a goal scorer and a savior. So you won't want him for midfield as much as you would Maestro, Snasky, and Miho. Mystic and Dapper more attacker. Actually, I think Mystic has just been getting goals recently, not so much saves. Dapper does get quite a fair bit of saves if I'm not mistaken though, so not a bad place to put him. But yeah, that rounds off my 5 bargain picks. There's a lot of other players in the middle here that I could talk about. Like, if I was going to draw your attention to any, it would be Torment, Metza, Remco, Turbo, and Bluey, actually. Yeah, and Cuxer, like I said earlier. They're the players, they're in the middle, and they're good value for money, I think. But I just wanted to do 5 and 5, just to make it a little bit more clear when this was going to start and finish. But those are the players that I would recommend you take a look at. My number 1 tip for this, as always though, pay attention to the schedule, work out who am I going to need to bench after week 1. Okay, we've got Garrett in our team, he needs to get benched after week 3. Mystic's in our team, he needs to get benched after week 4. Have we got enough transfers every week to make this work? Squishy and Gimmick both need to be benched after week 1, so we definitely don't want to have to bench more people. Oh, Ignite needs to be benched after week 1 as well. Right, can we get the sub in? Okay, yeah, we can get the sub in. Thank goodness. That you need to do this thought process before it actually happens, or else you're going to drop a lot of points. Finally, just to say again, the league thing at the top, if you go to my leagues, you can create a league or join a league. I'll let you guys know on Twitter if I do get additional slots in a league that I can run with you guys. I'll have to let you know. What on earth is this thing telling me? There we go. We'll go back to the screen where we've got little Darth Torsos in the back here giving us evils. But yeah, let me know. Everything is going to be first heard about on Twitter and my Twitch channel. I'll of course mention it in a future YouTube video if I do have any updates on the league thing. Don't worry though if you can't get in a league, if you can't get in my league, if you can't get in another league, you'll still have your own points and your own score visible, and you can tweet that at me. You can you know, tell me how well you're doing. You can swing by my Twitch channel, let me know how you're getting on. We can compare, see who's got the best fantasy team. But that's pretty much it. Definitely get stuck in. This makes RLCS more exciting to watch because there's more things to pay attention for, and you know, it gives you a little bit more incentive to keep an eye on who's doing well and what teams are doing well, what players are doing well, and paying attention to matchups that are coming up. It just makes it a little bit more engaging. So I'd say, yeah, definitely get stuck in. Even if you're just going to pick a team and then leave it all season and see how it does, why not? You might get lucky and finish high up in the standings. Then you can go and laugh at everybody who's been sweating and trying all season. But as always, guys, I'll be back tomorrow with another video. So hopefully I'll see you then. If not, hopefully I'll see you again in the future. Either way, thanks so much for watching and take care.